It's been less than a month into the new year, and Amazon has already announced that they are going to cut 30,000 employees. Intel 25,000, Microsoft 15,000, Dell 12,000, and the list goes on. And everyone assumed that junior developers would be the first to go. And don't get me wrong, if you're a junior developer right now, the job market sure is brutal, but here's what nobody is talking about. Senior developers, so the people with 10, 15, sometimes even more years of experience, the ones making $200,000, $300,000 plus a year, are getting cut just as hard. And I'm not just talking about one or two unlucky people that you might have seen. I mean, entire teams of senior engineers are being dissolved at companies that you have most definitely heard of. And I know this firsthand because I have spent the last 20 months helping software engineers, many of whom were laid off, transition from the 9-to-5 to starting their own businesses. So in this video, I am going to break down exactly why this is happening. And spoiler alert, it is not just AI. That's part of it, sure, but the real reasons are way more uncomfortable than that. And then I'll show you the only move that actually protects you. The same move that's helped the engineers that I work with go from laid off to earning more than they ever did as an employee. So let's start with why a significant portion of senior developers are getting laid off. If you've been in this industry for a while, you've probably told yourself some version of this story, or at least you might have heard it from somebody else. Oh, I have years of experience, I know the code base inside and out, I consider myself a domain expert, and I'm the person that everybody comes to when something breaks. There is no way that anybody can fire me. I am too important. And 10 years ago, this story was, I would say, mostly true. Deep institutional knowledge was genuinely hard to replace back in the day. And the cost of onboarding somebody new, getting them up to speed on a legacy system, training them, putting all the resources in them, understanding all the weird edge cases, it simply just wasn't worth it for most companies to actually make that swap. But here's the thing that fundamentally changed. Companies stopped optimizing for knowledge retention and they started optimizing for cost efficiency. And when a company is staring at a senior engineer making anywhere from 2 to 3 times more than their junior counterparts, if not more, they realize that, wait a minute, if I can get 80% of that output from a combination of offshore contractors and AI tooling, why wouldn't I do that? Especially at a fraction of the cost. So this irreplaceable story actually starts to slowly crack when we come face to face with the reality. Because the uncomfortable truth in 2026 is this. The same things that got you promoted to a senior engineer, so your high salary, your deep specialization, your multiple years at the same company, those are now the exact reasons that you are becoming a target. So you're not necessarily being fired because you're bad at your job. That's not it. You are being fired because you are now becoming too expensive at your job. But cost cutting alone doesn't obviously explain the full picture here, because there actually is a second force that most developers are completely ignoring. If you've been paying attention to tech Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, you've probably seen the narrative of, oh, AI is going to replace all developers, especially with what's happening with Molt and the AI social media and all these things. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that AI doesn't matter. It most definitely does. And in the near future, AI will absolutely be able to do a significant chunk of what we do as software engineers today. And that's not fear-mongering. It is simply the trajectory that we are on, and we would be delusional not to admit that. But right now in 2026, AI is not the main reason that senior developers are losing their jobs. It is simply one of the 3 forces that are all hitting at the same exact time. And force number 1, which is what we talked about, AI tooling. So yes, tools like Cursor, Copilot, Cloud Code, these are all genuinely making individual developers much more productive. But the real impact isn't that this AI is necessarily replacing you directly, it's that this AI makes it possible for a smaller and cheaper team to do what your everyday larger and more expensive team used to do. So nowadays, one senior dev with AI tooling can output what used to take 3 or more junior engineers with a senior team leading them, which means most companies don't need nearly as many seats anymore. So that alone would be bad enough, but it actually gets worse. Because force number 2, this is something that nobody wants to talk about: offshoring. Companies have been quietly shifting engineering work overseas for years. But the recent wave of layoffs, especially from the pandemic, has accelerated this massively. So why pay a Bay Area senior software engineer upwards of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 when you can hire 2 experienced engineers in Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia for a combined $100,000 paycheck, if even that? And before you think, well, Bago, the quality won't be nearly as good. I've worked with offshore teams. Yeah, but the talent pool globally has caught up and it is improving. So these aren't just your regular everyday junior developers. These are highly skilled individuals who happen to live in a country with a much lower cost of living. And then we have the third shift that's even more insidious. Force number 3 is the contractor model. You see, more and more companies are converting their full-time senior roles into contract positions. This means that there are no benefits, no equity, and no real job security. You do the same exact work for the company, but the company has zero long-term obligation to you in the form of healthcare if you're on a W-2 or anything of that sort. And when the project wraps up, they're simply gonna say thank you and goodbye. So when people say AI is coming for our jobs, they are only telling a third of the full story. The reality is that you are facing a triple threat as a software engineer in 2026: AI, offshoring, and the contractor shift. And all 3 of them combined disproportionately affect senior software engineers specifically, because senior engineers are the most expensive line item on the budget. So blaming it all on AI is actually pretty convenient for most people as well as the companies. Because if it's just AI, then you can tell yourself, well, I'll just learn the new tools and I'll be fine. But that ignores the other 2 forces that have nothing to do with the technology that you're learning and everything to do with simply the macroeconomics of the world. Now, if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, okay, Bago, this is terrifying, but what am I supposed to do? Just accept it? Not necessarily. But the path forward isn't what most software engineers might actually think. So here's what most developers do when they feel that the ground is shifting underneath them, right? They would double down on the corporate ladder, so to say. Either look for a better job at a better company for higher pay, or they would think, I need to get to staff engineer, I need to get to principal, I need to become so specialized in what I'm doing that I am impossible to replace. But that logic has a very fatal flaw. The higher you climb in a company, the more expensive you become for that company. And the more expensive you become, the bigger the target on your back during the next round of cuts, because that's what they're going to be taking a look at. It's much easier for them to fire 1 senior developer than 5 juniors. So think about it. A principal engineer at a FANG company that might be making $500,000 in total compensation, well, that's pretty much the salary of an entire offshore team. When the CFO is looking at the budget, trying to find savings, who do you think is going to catch their attention first? Especially if that person truly isn't pulling their weight. And there's of course another problem with specialization that nobody talks about. And it's that when you become the quote-unquote person who knows everything about system X, your value is tied entirely to that system. If the company sunsets it, if the company migrates to a new architecture, or if it gets acquired, then your decade worth of specialized knowledge now becomes potentially worthless overnight. And you realize that you didn't build a career, rather you sort of built a dependency, as we saw with Asian Dad Energy, who was fired after 25 years of being at the same company. So the career ladder was designed for a world where companies kept employees for 30 years and actually rewarded loyalty. And it was the case back in the day, but that world does not exist anymore. Climbing higher doesn't make you safer, it just makes you more expensive, more specialized, and more exposed to future job cuts. So if the corporate ladder isn't the answer, then what is? Well, let me tell you about someone who was in this exact same situation and what he decided to do about it. I want to tell you about a guy named Marko. Marko was a software engineer at Microsoft from Serbia, and on paper, he had pretty much made it. He was in his 20s and he was earning well over $70,000 a year in Serbia, which is, for reference, a pretty insane salary there, like top 1% money for his age bracket. And he was working for one of the most prestigious companies in the world, and his friends and family thought that he'd won. But here's what Marko told me about how that job actually felt to him outside of the concerns of potentially being fired. He said, and I'll never forget his words, that it drains me, it kills me. And I want you to let that sink in for a second. He had top 1% salary in a world-class company, and the guy still felt like he was dying inside because at any moment he could have gotten fired. He saw his colleagues get fired beforehand, and even with all the positives, he still had the golden handcuffs. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but on the inside, he knew that he was trading his best years, his best energy, and his best ideas for a salary that somebody else decided for him. And Marko knew that he was meant for more. But like a lot of other talented software engineers, he was stuck on one particular question. What problem should I even solve? What's my business idea? So he had the skills to build anything. He just didn't know what exactly to build. So here's exactly what Marko actually did. Instead of climbing higher at Microsoft, instead of chasing staff engineer or trying to get transferred to a quote-unquote safer team, he made a decision that most people would call crazy. He quit. He walked away from a top 1% salary at one of the biggest companies on the entire planet. And he actually turned down a 4-time salary increase to stay because he recognized that a bigger paycheck was just a deeper trap. End of the day, he was still at risk of being fired. Today, Marko is earning more than double what he was making at Microsoft. He's working on something that he's actually genuinely passionate about. And best of all, he has equity in what he's building. So he went from being sort of like a cog in a machine that could replace him at any given moment to being an owner in something he actually cares about. And the thing that made this possible wasn't some magic skill that he learned. It wasn't a side project that randomly blew up. It wasn't a random SaaS idea he saw on an indie hacker forum and he went viral from. It was a shift in thinking from how do I become more valuable to a company to how do I build something valuable of my own that I can actually own. Now, I am not telling you to quit your job tomorrow, but I am telling you that there is a version of this path available to you and you specifically. And it starts with something very specific. Here's what I want you to really internalize from everything that we just talked about. No job is safe as a software engineer. Not junior, not senior, not staff, not principal. The era of trading your time for somebody else's security is fundamentally ending. Companies are no longer rewarding loyalty. In fact, they're punishing it. But, and this is the part that most doom and gloom videos actually leave out, you are in an incredible position right now. So I want you to think about what you actually have that most people do not. You as a software engineer can build things. You are a creator. You can create real functional products that solve real problems. And you don't need to hire a development team. You don't need to raise money just to build a prototype. You can sit down tonight, open up your laptop, launch up Cloud Code, and start building something that could generate revenue within a matter of weeks. Now, most aspiring entrepreneurs would kill for the skills that you actually have every day as a software engineer, because these same entrepreneurs spend months and thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, trying to find a technical co-founder just like you. But guess what? You are the technical co-founder already. You just haven't found the exact problem that you need to exercise your skills on. And that's the real bottleneck, by the way. It's not your skills, it's not your motivation, and it's not your lack of time. The thing that keeps most software engineers stuck in jobs that they hate is one single question. Okay, even if I quit the job or I get out of a 9-to-5, how do I make money? What problem do I solve? So once you answer that question, everything else becomes a simple engineering problem. And you already know how to solve engineering problems because that's literally what you do every single day at your 9-to-5. So the hard part isn't building the product. The hard part is finding the right problem, the right quote-unquote idea. And that's exactly what most engineers never actually learn, because nobody teaches it in a CS degree and no company is going to actually train you to one day leave them. And this is why I built something to help with this. I am hosting a free live webinar that is entirely focused on business ideation for software engineers. And this isn't a generic, oh, follow your passion advice. I'm going to walk you through the exact step-by-step frameworks for identifying real problems worth solving, validating these ideas before you write a single line of code, and leveraging the unfair advantages that you already have as a software engineer. This is the same exact process that helped people like Marko go from feeling stuck at Microsoft to building something that they actually own. This is what helped John go from zero to over $100,000 a month in revenue in 11 months. So the link to sign up is in the description below and it's pinned in the comments. It is completely free, but the spots are limited because I don't want to keep it interactive. So if this resonated with you at all, go grab your spot right now. I will see you there. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good one.